Our final eclipse of 2023 occurs in the sign of Taurus on Saturday, October 28th, completing the 2-year-long cycle of transformation that started in early 2022. It coincides with Mercury Mars conjunction in opposition to Jupiter, which intensifies the energy and suggests secrets coming to light, important conversations, powerful cutting speech, and major revelations. The goal here, as Taurus would confirm, is to create more stability and joy in your life, but we are reminded that you cannot have light without first seeing the darkness. Let's take a closer look. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal, relationship, and predictive astrology. If you like my channel, don't forget to like or comment, subscribe, and press the notification bell. You also have the option of saying thank you by buying me a coffee. Before we dive in, I am finishing up the planner for 2024. It will soon go on sale, so keep your radars, keep them open to hear for when it's officially on sale. As well as if you'd like to work with me, if you'd like some guidance through the challenging eclipse season energy. I sure have been feeling it a lot. Share if you have been as well. You can always book a reading at anastasiadoesastrology.com, and you can pick up some candles or oils that can support you through these difficult times. For example, Moon in Cancer has very soothing, supportive energy. It smells like a moonflower nectar. Looks pretty, and it has silver foil in it. Or you can get some support for Venusian energy because Venus is currently in Virgo in the sign of her fall, ruling the eclipses, so there's a bit of a difficult pressure placed on Venus. Venus in Libra, Venus Cazimi, Moonlit Trinity are all perfect for working with Venus. Moonlit Trinity especially is great if your Venus is in an earth or water sign, and the opposite, fire, air, I would highly recommend Venus in Libra or Venus Cazimi. So we have the lunar eclipse in Taurus. The eclipse is the full moon, right? It's the full moon on steroids. It's a major full moon, the time of karmic adjustment and rebalancing. We just had an eclipse in Libra, the solar eclipse. Let me know how that went for you. But lunar eclipse is the time of major completions, right? And here it's not only major completion because it's an eclipse, but it's the final eclipse in Taurus for the next 9 years or 8 years. So we're not getting this house in our chart highlighted that strongly for a while. So we're learning really big lessons. We are getting ready to complete a big chapter and kind of grow, right? The eclipse occurs at 4:23 p.m. Eastern time zone on Saturday, October 28th at 5 degrees Taurus. So you will feel it the most if you have planets in the fixed signs and if you have your angles in the fixed signs. So if you are Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, Aquarius rising sign, or, if it's the sign of your midheaven, descendant, I see all of that will be important. I don't know why I pointed down for midheaven. Midheaven is at the top. So especially strongly felt by those 4 signs, especially if your placements are in between, let's say, 1 and 9 degrees, but it occurs at 5 degrees Taurus, and it is ruled by Venus in Virgo, which ruled the eclipse we just had in Libra. So Venus in Virgo is suggesting the time of careful analysis of our relationships, of careful weighing of pros and the cons, and perhaps cleaning space, right? Cleaning space, cleaning our minds, cleaning physical space in order to create better balance and better flow. Like I said, it's the final eclipse in Taurus. The storyline started in 2022 when the nodes shifted into Taurus, into Scorpio. First solar eclipse in Taurus happened on April 30th, 2022. So as you listen to the horoscopes given for your rising sign, reflect back and think, how has your life and how have the topics of this house changed in the last couple of years? We can expect high, deep feelings, right? The lunar eclipse, always the time of like major eruptions, but also big emotions, and those emotions can help guide you, and they can, you know, they can improve, they can sort of, the eclipses can highlight your strong intuition and point your feelings in the direction that needs attention. Perhaps you get frustrated over something silly, but it's indicative of a bigger struggle you have in your relationship, for example. So find ways, you know, as always, find healthy ways of dealing with emotions. The moon is exalted in Taurus, so hopefully that will provide stabilizing, or will provide a stabilizing effect. You also have the moon hanging out together with Jupiter in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus. And on the opposite end of it, we have the Sun, Mercury, and Mars in Scorpio, which is a very literal battle between the shadows and the light, right? Like the moon in Taurus, Taurus is spring, Taurus is birth, new beginnings. Scorpio is the fall, it's death and rebirth, it's kind of shadows and transformation. So a lot of, like I said in the introduction to this video, you cannot know light without first being in the dark, right? You wouldn't appreciate the light if you haven't seen the darkness. So it's very much like that Scorpio energy of release, transformation, so that something stable can be reborn and not being afraid of the darkness. Same day of the eclipse, Mercury and Mars conjoin and oppose Jupiter. So Mercury and Mars together is very sharp mind. It's Mercury and Mars in Scorpio, very intuitive, very focused thinking. You're sort of more likely to argue because, you know, you're more willing to stand up for what you believe and more willing to yield the weapon of your words, basically. So you're, like I said, it's more likely to get into fights. It's more likely to argue. Watch out for being too sort of sharp, right? Or saying things that are destructive for you, because at the same time, Mercury and Mars oppose Jupiter, which can blow things out of proportion, right? Like you feel very strong desire to express yourself. You feel driven to stand up for your beliefs. And that could be great. That could be important in terms of finding compromise and kind of having honest conversations, but it can also lead you in the wrong place, right? Like taking risks that are not necessary, for example, or promising and expressing saying that you can do something, but in reality you cannot. So this could be, I think, lovely for like if you're a lawyer and you have to present your case in court, or if you're a public speaker of some sorts and you have to defend the policy. But it could be less constructive if you are being cocky or overconfident and taking on too much, or just focusing on yourself and like having poor morals, I think. So be careful, definitely be careful for overdoing it. Be careful of taking unnecessary risks. Make sure you're not letting the passions take the best of you. Try to stay grounded, right? I also really like that even though the eclipse is ruled by Venus in Virgo, she is getting out of the more difficult aspects she faced early in the month, because she started, Venus entered Virgo on October 8th, Sunday, I believe. I remember it clear as day. It wasn't a good day for me. But she immediately opposed Saturn. So she sort of like, she walks into a room and she faces, I guess, it's like a student who was just maybe having a good time and they walk into the classroom and the entire class is looking at them, or like the principal is in the office. So the principal is in the classroom and they're like sort of testing and scolding Venus. So she started the month difficult. We had the eclipse, we had the solar eclipse in Libra, which was all about renegotiating, releasing some of people-pleasing tendencies, letting go of outdated relationships, kind of facing the past and learning from the lessons of history. But after we've been through that ringer, we now have a more uplifting Venusian energy. She just trined Jupiter on the 21st, 22nd, and she is applying to Uranus. So to me, this reads as like fresh perspective and having that ability to have balance between the shadowy side of us and the more emotional and maybe kind of, you know, the dark feelings that we faced and the more happy times. I look at Venus trine Uranus as fresh perspective. It's you seeing things differently and you finding ways out of tough situations and being able to sort of, you know, find solutions. So big question here is, do you want to be right? Do you want to win? Or do you want to be happy and find compromise, right? So do not let your, even if you know you're right, even if you're confident 100%, sometimes you just don't fully know the entirety of the picture. Sometimes it's best to compromise and agree to disagree and part ways. So don't sort of get too caught up in the moment and forget the goal or forget the mission, if you choose to accept it, is to find peace in life. And I think being that we are completing this cycle of Taurus, Scorpio eclipses, and the North Node has been in Taurus, it's now in Aries, I see this as an invitation to find joy in your life, even if it's small things, right? Like find ways to move through life with more stable and more kind of slow and sensual energy, which is what Taurus is all about, right? Like it's about laying in the field, smelling the flowers, eating delicious foods, having passionate sex, being lazy, being cozy. So this eclipse to me is suggesting that you are invited to appreciate all the things you have in life and remember that no matter how difficult it gets, there's always something that you are lucky to experience as the person who is alive, right? I always feel this way when I see like birds or nature or dogs or anything like that. I'm like, this is fun. Life is fun. So let's take it through all 12 zodiac signs and give you some ideas on what this might be about. Let me know if it resonates in the comments below. And as always, you can book a reading and talk to me face-to-face at anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you are an Aries rising, the lunar eclipse takes place in your second house. Of course, I wrote in my notes solar eclipse, and I wrote it for all zodiac signs. So we have a lunar eclipse in your second house in opposition to Mars and Mercury in the 8th, ruled by Venus in the 6th. So we just had, if you're an Aries rising, we just had a solar eclipse in your 7th house. And you have been going through some changes in your relationships. These could be new beginnings. This could be starting a new relationship. This could be cleansing or adjusting, right? Like ruled by Venus in the 6th house, I think perhaps seeing things more honestly and seeing how things need to be structured and the changes you need to make to relationships, or even the misalignments in relationships perhaps, and like getting really honest about it and being really kind of clear on what you want, what the person wants. And now we get this lunar eclipse in your second house suggesting big changes and transformations to your finances, resources, to your values, to your networks as well, right? Like the Mars and Mercury at the same time are in your 8th house, which could be some kind of turbulence or some kind of realizations and maybe tensions around shared resources, shared dynamics. That could be your partner and money you have together. That could be your business associates and the way they handle work and you handle work. Or that could be your roommate, right? And there might be some sort of break or some kind of change happening in the resources that other people are willing to share with you. So to me, the solar eclipse in the second house, and take a look back at the last 2 years. How has your financial situation changed? How have your values changed, right? Because all of it is connected. The changes you're going through in relationships could be connected to finances, or the financial changes could be connected to the relationship transformation. So we are driven by peace here. So ultimately, solar eclipse in the second house will suggest completing a chapter of financial growth, completing a chapter of examining your values, and perhaps realizing that you want to let go of a job that is too stressful and chaotic and not well paid, maybe you feel ready to start your own business, right? Maybe you're parting ways with somebody and becoming more independent. My Aries rising friend is potentially separating from a roommate, and she's had roommates her entire life and her entire, life in the States, and she's getting ready to live by herself. So there is you wouldn't necessarily maybe think of that in this eclipse, but I think it applies a lot because there is a sense of separation in the house of shared dynamics and a sense of solidification in the house of personal resources. And to me, this definitely applies to your self-worth as well, and to realizing that, you can rely on yourself, that you can trust in yourself, and you can have enough, sort of like even this mindset of like having enough and thinking that you can manifest whatever you desire. Maybe you're also clearing your debts and taking more responsibility for your financial situation, potentially. For Taurus risings, this lunar eclipse is happening in the first house, and it happens on the same day as Mars and Mercury conjoin in your 7th house, opposed Jupiter in the 1st, and is ruled by Venus in the 5th. So for Taurus risings, this is an end of a big personal transformation that started in early 2022. I know some of you guys became parents. I know some of you changed careers, discovered spiritual interests. I know people who changed jobs with Taurus on the ascendant, and so there's been a lot of personal readjustments, right? It comes on the heels of the solar eclipse we just had in the 6th house, where you are examining your relationship to the grind, to hard work, and learning to prioritize your well-being, right? You're like releasing some of the unhealthy tendencies around work or around your health. And I think also even with North Node in your 12th house, perhaps examining how can you structure your everyday life to have more rest and to have more time for things that are truly important to you, because the eclipse is ruled by Venus in the 5th house of joy, pleasure, romance, children. So you're exploring all of those things, and you are connecting to those passions and those hobbies. And the solar eclipse in the 1st house is very much about you, your look, your self-worth, your personal goals and desires. And it's asking you, how can you have more space for them? How can you present yourself differently, right? And the changes represented by this lunar eclipse can be anywhere from changing your hairstyle to quitting a job and starting a business, right? But the result, I'm also wondering how you're balancing your partnerships and your personal goals, because as the eclipse comes in to your 1st house, we also have Mars and Mercury in the 7th house. So there might be some like important conversations and a need to balance your relationships with your personal goals. Also, just be honest, right? Like Mars and Mercury in the 7th house can create like this very interesting conversation with a partner. So let me know how this goes, and keep plugging along, keep focusing on your personal development, and, try not to overdo it around this time, because Mars and Mercury in the 7th oppose Jupiter in the 1st, which could make you feel like you can handle it all. But just be mindful with your resources, your time, and energy. For the Gemini risings, the lunar eclipse is happening in your 12th house at the same time as Mars conjoins Mercury in the 6th, and the ruler of the eclipse is Venus in the 4th. So 12th house is the place of like liminal, transitional situations. And the fact that the eclipse is ruled by Venus in the 4th, I think you are rediscovering comfort, and you are rethinking your home and your family and your living situation, which is always represented by the 4th house. It could be literal changes in your living situation that are on your mind, as well as perhaps deeper questions of what comfort is and who is family, who are the people you see yourself with, right? Take a look back at the last couple of years. We started having eclipses in Taurus in early 2022, and this is a big change, a big completion, right? So this could be the time when you establish yourself in that liminal place. If you've been in the place of the mind, right, and you've been struggling with big decisions, this could be the time when the decision comes through and you let go of fears and you figure out who you are and who you want to be. If you've been dealing with the literal process of some kind of transformation where you've been moving or you've been handling a state of your parents, for example, this could also be the time when things finalize and solidify and give you some answers. So hopefully that's what comes in for you. We just had the solar eclipse in the 5th house, so that to me is suggesting that you're also in this place of reevaluating what pleasure is and what joy is and what kind of things you want to fill your day with. And the lunar eclipse in the 12th house, it's always the time of completion and change and releasing something. So it could be an important time when you're letting a self-defeating tendency go, or you're letting an actual pursuit go, like a job, and maybe choosing work that is more spiritually satisfying, completing some kind of project, right? And letting go of working really hard in order to have more peace. Releasing a battle you've been facing in order to have more joy. I can also see here professional transformations for sure, because Mars and Mercury are in your 6th house. Mars and Mercury in the 6th house around the time of the eclipse can definitely create some kind of work tension. It's interesting because like Mars and Mercury in the 6th suggests that there's a lot of action in your everyday life. You're working, you're hustling, you're solving a lot of, maybe putting out a lot of fires, and it opposes Jupiter in your 12th house, and there might just be like too many fires to put out. That's something that like snaps you out of it and causes you to make like a rash decision and say, like, I don't know, I quit, or I'm buying a ticket and I'm going to Hawaii or something like that. So it could be very important for balancing, I think, your workload with your peace. And the goal is to have more peace. I think for a while as a Gemini rising, you've been working on having a better flow, right? Doing work that is not as exhausting. So this could definitely be some kind of turning point when it comes to that, as well as just having more peace and releasing some kind of difficult situation in order to gain some perspective. Let me know how this resonates down below. For the lovely Cancer risings, the solar eclipse, the lunar eclipse, I put it wrong in my notes, so I'm always going to be saying solar eclipse. For lovely Cancer risings, the lunar eclipse happens in the 11th house, at the same time as Mars and Mercury conjoin in the 5th, and it's ruled by Venus in the 3rd. So we just had, if you are a Cancer rising, we just had a solar eclipse in your 4th house, which could have brought a lot of attention to your home, family, living situation, past karma, questions of comfort, questions of what makes you feel secure. And there's been some kind of transformation there. There's been perhaps a release of old dynamics. Maybe you've traveled back in time physically, where you moved back in with your parents, or emotionally, where you addressed some past difficulty. And it feels like now you are redefining your dreams and you're redefining your goals in life, and maybe closing an old chapter so that you can open up your eyes to something new. So, Taurus 11th house could be representative of completing a long-term project. Like you've been working with your friend on putting out a book, and now you're ready to present it to the world. There might be some tensions, right? There might be some frustrations around pleasure, around joy, around children and sex even. But that could be, I think, the fire that motivates you. And I'm getting the tension from Mars and Mercury in the 5th house in opposition to Jupiter in your 11th house. So some kind of conversations that need to happen, some type of changes around self-expression, around business, around interests, around hobbies, that either, like I said, closing something and wrapping things up, or starting something new. And the lunar eclipse in your 11th house could also be very much symbolic of changing alliances. And there's a lot going on, right? There's a lot going on internally for you and externally, but I think the inner changes you're going through with the solar eclipse we just had in the 4th house definitely spill out into your relationships, where you start to question who's truly on your side, and either letting go of connections that feel misaligned with you somehow, or embracing new partnerships and new relationships and new long-term goals and dreams and aspirations that will help you feel more attuned with the community and with your new sense of self. And like I said, take a look back at early 2022 when we first started having eclipses in Taurus. How has your relationship with people in your life changed? How has your network changed? What kind of projects you've been working on that are maybe coming full circle right now? All of those could be important questions. If you are a Leo rising, the lunar eclipse is highlighting your 10th house of career, status, and reputation. At the same time as Mars and Mercury conjoined in the 4th, and the eclipse is ruled by Venus in the 2nd. So the lunar eclipse in the 10th is the time for change professionally. And this could be the time you celebrate a big accomplishment that maybe takes you all the way back to early 2022 when we first started having eclipses in Taurus. Please let me know, how has your career changed since then? So maybe you've been looking for work and now you find it, or you've been trying to get a promotion and now you get it, right? The eclipse we just had in your 3rd house, the solar eclipse we had in the 3rd house, could have indicated changes, could have brought like changes to your schedule, changes to your everyday life, changes to your way of thinking. It could have introduced some new writing projects or some new hobbies and skills that you're becoming more interested in, and sort of brought your attention to them. And I think now with the lunar eclipse in the house of career, you are getting ready to pursue those new projects. And you're also getting ready, the ruler is Venus in the 2nd house, so you're like really focused on having financial abundance right now. I think either financial abundance with Venus in the 2nd house, or just more stability. I think you want a job that is abundant, stable, but also potentially creative and fulfilling, right? And in order to make that happen, you will have to go out there and make it happen. So this is it's definitely an interesting time, especially with Venus in your 2nd house of resources trining Jupiter. You know, it's now separating from Jupiter in your 10th house of career, bringing some kind of positive influence in terms of connections, in terms of bonuses and opportunities that you perhaps need. So be loud, be open, express what you want, and this could be a very lovely period in which you get it. I could see some of you starting a business. I could see some of you changing jobs in order to have a better balance. It's interesting too with Mars and Mercury in the 4th. Those are suggestive of some kind of tensions and some possible transformations around family and your living situation. Maybe that is also affecting professional changes, or just the fact that you're trying to balance everything that's going on in the home with Scorpio season. You know, like home life can be a little bit more turbulent or just require more attention, more managing. So having to have a good balance, good flow between your work life and home life is crucial around this time. Let me know how this resonates. How has your professional life and goals and public life and aspirations, how have they changed since 2022? If you are a Virgo rising, there's a solar eclipse in your, there's a lunar eclipse. If you are a Virgo rising, there's a lunar eclipse in your 9th house. Mars conjoins Mercury in the 3rd house, and the ruler is Venus in the 1st. So we just had a solar eclipse in your second house, which suggests some changes around finances, around values, around resources. And the lunar eclipse in the ninth house is the time of big transformations around education, around writing, legal, travel matters, and the time to make changes that perhaps offer more stability. So I wonder if this is coming off of the solar eclipse in Libra, if this is somehow connected to investing money in education, or it's connected to making money from writing. There might be some kind of big, like exclamation point, and you being able to present your work that you've been really kind of laboring over for a while. There could be an ideological shift I can see as well, represented by this solar eclipse, where you start to value yourself a lot more, with Venus being in your first house and a lot of attention going to personal image, to your physical body, to your health. I think the lunar eclipse in the ninth house can definitely bring turning points around tangible things like graduating or starting school and becoming, getting your master's, or going on a trip that you've been planning for a long time. Even moving, I can see here, because ninth house represents foreign lands. But it could also be a very spiritual time as well, where your beliefs are transforming. Perhaps in the last 2 years, you have really changed the way you define yourself. If you didn't believe that you're capable of becoming a writer and finishing a book, maybe now you have written 2, right? Maybe you've started to see yourself as a business owner potentially, or a teacher, while in the past you just thought that you are an eternal student. So a lot of, I think, ideological shifts, as well as actual shifts maybe surrounding publishing, writing, education, travel, are possibilities here. Please let me know how this resonates down below. If you are a Libra rising, dear Libra risings, there's a lunar eclipse happening in your 8th house, the last of the Taurus eclipses, right? Big deal, exciting. At the same time as Mars and Mercury come together in your 2nd house, and the ruler is Venus in the 12th. So this is the time of big changes and transformations around resources, energy, values you share with other people. There might be changes to your partner's resources, and just in general, I think the way of relating, the way of relying and trusting other people can be changing. We just had a solar eclipse in your 1st house, ruled by Venus in the 12th. We have the same ruler with this eclipse as well. It's Venus in the 12th, and there's a lot of inner transformation you're going through. I think on one hand, you are examining your self-defeating tendencies in relationships, you're examining your past, you're examining your history, and you're transforming. You are reinventing yourself. In a way, you're shedding your old skin. You're literally going through through the time of rebirth, right? And it's not always easy, and I think the first eclipse for me as a Libra rising was very emotional and very heavy, and just the events leading up to it were like very intense. I don't remember ever feeling that way about an eclipse, but that's because it's in my 1st house. Please share how you felt. Have you felt the intensity before October 14th? But as you are going through this personal transformation, and as you are reevaluating your self-defeating tendencies and kind of taking a close look at yourself, the lunar eclipse in the 8th house is saying that you're now going into the realm of sharing with others. And there might be a time there might be an opportunity to create some kind of compromise and balance, right? Because that's what Taurus wants. Taurus wants stability. Taurus wants peace. So the lunar eclipse to me is inviting you, on one hand, to redefine and perhaps renegotiate some agreements to have a better flow. You may be also getting past some kind of disagreement surrounding money, surrounding resources. Like if you're someone who's negotiating a contract, this could be the time when the contract comes through. Paying off debts, releasing some kind of dependencies I can see here, releasing unhealthy relationships, releasing anything that is tying you down and is holding you back, like an actual debt or a spiritual debt that you owe to somebody, or that is owed to you. Maybe you finally say, I don't care about it, I'm done, like, and goodbye, right? And this could definitely be the time when you let something go and you find freedom in independence, or instead you find compromise and you find ways to get along with other people. A sense of healing, a sense of finding more stability, finding more trust in the other person is also likely here. So please let me know how this resonates, and how has your life and relationships changed since early 2022. If you are a Scorpio rising, there is a lunar eclipse in your 7th house, completing a big chapter of relationship changes that started in 2022. We also have Mars and Mercury conjoining in your 1st house. The ruler is Venus in the 11th. We just had a solar eclipse in your 12th house. I'm just naming a lot of numbers, but we had the solar eclipse in the 12th. You may have gone through a sense of spiritual realignment. You've maybe attuned more to yourself. You've maybe faced some self-defeating tendencies, realized that there are ways in which you sabotage yourself, where maybe there are places where you lack trust or where you trust too much. And now with the lunar eclipse in the 7th, you are looking at your personal relationships. And if you are married or dating, this can be a very transformative, honest time in your romantic partnership, right? Because we also have Mars and Mercury in your 1st, and you're very much driven to express yourself and speak your truth. Just make sure you're not too forceful, right? And kind of get aligned. The ruler Venus being in the 11th to me also feels like you are looking at your dreams and your passions and your aspirations, and maybe your friendships, and you're speaking up on behalf of those, or you're trying to find better balance, better compromise between yourself and your partner. If you're single, this could apply to any close personal one-on-one relationships that sometimes feel like you're an old married couple. This could also apply to your business. Sometimes we see parents step into these roles of partners for other people. So I see this as choosing peace, releasing some drama, going through a big romantic transformation where maybe you get engaged, maybe you get pregnant, maybe you get married, or letting go. It could also be the time where you let go a relationship that is just too draining and too unhealthy for you. So I wish you to have a happy eclipse if you are a Scorpio rising. If you are a Sagittarius rising, we have a lunar eclipse in your 6th house. Mars and Mercury conjoin in the 12th. The ruler is Venus in the 10th. So with Venus in the 10th, being in charge of this eclipse and the solar eclipse we just had in your 11th house, I think you are going through a big period of rethinking your public life, rethinking your career and your aspirations, and also just rethinking what you're known for. Maybe you have a job and you enjoy your job, but you want to be known as the head of the volunteer association, or you want to be known as the lead pet trainer or something like that, or a dancer, right? So there might be some sort of reattunement in your professional life. And the lunar eclipse takes us to the 6th house, right? And 6th house is the nitty-gritty. It's the work, the hard work, sweat and tears, anywhere where you're problem solving and you're in the middle of things, grinding away, right? So lunar eclipse could bring a change here. It could bring completion of a long project that you've been working on. Maybe it's a work project, maybe it's a health project where you've been trying to, build a ramp for your child who's using a wheelchair or something, right? There might be some kind of like change that brings more peace that initially required a lot of grinding, but now you kind of have a strong routine around that, or you have a strong view of making things work. This could also be the time when you let something go. Like I can see this very much releasing a bad habit, releasing a negative tendency, releasing a job even, right? Like Mars and Mercury are in your 12th house. And that reads as very spiritual and sort of a source of better self-understanding. But I think changes to our mental health pretty much always affect our physical health and our everyday life. So a very insightful time, lots of opportunities, I think, to allow yourself be the way you are, to accept yourself, to accept things in your life, maybe release control a little bit and make changes that bring just a little bit of peace and ease and steadiness to your everyday life. Maybe it's time to work a little less and, enjoy life a little bit more. Let me know how this resonates down below. If you are a Capricorn rising, there's a lunar eclipse in your 5th house. Mars and Mercury conjoin in the 11th. The ruler is Venus in the 9th. Okay, so lots going on, right? The ruler is Venus in the 9th. She just, she's in charge of the eclipse we just had in Libra, the solar eclipse. She's in charge of this lunar eclipse in the 5th house. So she's the big boss here, right? And so Venus in the 9th house could be an invitation for you to expand your life, to do more things that help you grow, to do work that potentially helps you grow, maybe to expand your pursuits professionally, where you take on mentoring somebody, or maybe to do work that lets you travel, or work that sends you to take some classes, right? There might be a lot of opportunities to maybe change your life that involves more travel, more education, more writing, publishing, that kind of fun. Venus in the 9th can also be this sign of ideological change, where you are letting yourself off the hook. Maybe you're accepting yourself for who you are. Maybe you are rethinking your role in the world and starting to see yourself as more of a teacher than the student or than a work bee, right? So there might be definitely ideological transformations. And the lunar eclipse in the 5th house, to me, says that these transformations are calling you to prioritize joy, pleasure, sensuality, creativity, good sex, good food, right? You're sort of bringing more pleasure in your life through creative pursuits, through romantic developments, even becoming a parent or nurturing something, right? Like the lunar eclipse in the 5th, if you've been trying to get pregnant, could be very much like, okay, now you're going to be expressing yourself through the joy of being a mother or a father, right? But it can also be a sense of inner nurturance and becoming a parent to yourself, right? Where you lay off yourself and start to support yourself a little bit more. I just looked at my candle, my Moon in Cancer candle that is supporting me through this time of the eclipse season. But yeah, I think some important transformations. Take a look back at when this cycle started, early 2022. Perhaps you've experienced a sense of growth in your romantic relationship or in the way you handle love. Maybe you've started to feel more worthy, right, of pleasure and joy and kind of all the good things in life. Maybe your parenthood situation changed and you became a parent. Maybe you've discovered a new passion and you're ready to dedicate more time to that passion. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. If you are an Aqua rising, there's a lunar eclipse in your 4th house at the same time as Mars and Mercury conjoin in the 10th, and the ruler is Venus in the 8th. So Venus in the 8th, being the ruler of the solar eclipse we just had in Libra in your 9th, and being the ruler of this eclipse we have in your 4th house, suggests to me some kind of change or just a lot of focus and maybe new developments in the sector of loans, debts, taxes, mortgages, and resources of other people. This could be a physical change, right? Like you are buying a house and you're getting a mortgage. Or this could be a more of inner psychological transformation where Venus in the 8th house is calling you to trust other people more, to let other people in the shape of a partner, in the shape of a friend, in the shape of a friend with benefits, whatever it might be. But Venus in the 8th is very much calling you to explore these dynamics we have with other people. And of course, the lunar eclipse draws attention to the sector of home and family, right? And so it's inviting you, I think, to have more joy in the home. It's inviting you to invest in the home. It could be the time of a powerful dynamic shift in your family life or in your relationship life, right? The lunar eclipse in the 4th could be the time when you finally sell the home, or you finally sign the papers on buying a new house. This could be the time you welcome a child or complete a home renovation project. But it's just interesting because Venus in the 8th house and the solar eclipse we had in the 9th, it just feels, I can definitely see this as like resources changing around home, family, and living situation. But I can also see this as like a healing time where you perhaps find a sense of respite in your home life, right? And you find a sense of happiness there and feel sort of cozy and well protected and taken care of, while maybe the rest of the world is not as solid and figured out, but you do have a sense of happiness at peace and peace where you at. And I think, Mars and Mercury in the 10th could definitely create some interference coming from the sector of career, but don't get too caught up on that. Just keep trying to build a happy medium and a good balance. Now, if you are a Pisces rising, there is a lunar eclipse in your 3rd house, and it's ruled by Venus in the 7th, at the same time as Mars and Mercury come together in the 9th house. So Venus is in your 7th. And she has been in your 7th since October 8th. She ruled the first eclipse in Libra on the 14th. She's the ruler of this eclipse, right? So Venus in the 7th draws a lot of attention to relationships. Those of romantic kind, those of business kind, those of any type of one-on-one contractual agreements and relationships, but just like interpersonal connections. And there might be a lot of, there might be initially, maybe you face some delays, some roadblocks, some frustrations. There might be a sense of criticism of self or criticism of partner, and just sort of having less than pleasant, less than easy experience currently, but also an invitation to see things realistically, right? To see relationships realistically, to invest in relationships or invest in yourself and how you handle things. The lunar eclipse in the 3rd house is definitely, to me, an invitation for a mindset shift. It's an invitation to change how you communicate and perhaps embrace more peaceful communication. It's not necessarily going to be easy with Mars and Mercury conjoining in your 9th house on the same day, opposing Jupiter in the 3rd. So be really mindful of ideological debates, because those will be just like so easy around this time, especially Mars and Mercury in the 9th. You will likely just go ballistic with like your strong ideals if you don't harness this energy productively. But, even if you do run into some kind of disagreement around this time, this is your opportunity to let go, to rethink, to choose peace, to choose agreement, to choose accord and understanding, even if you don't fully agree with the other person, even if, you feel like they don't fully understand you, but you're able to compromise, you're able to, or you have something that, brings you together. Just try to work through it. At the same time, this could be the time when you release a relationship, or you release a place of living because it's your neighborhood, or you kind of change the dynamic with your siblings and your neighbors, and you transform things either by parting ways or by reaching a compromise, right? If you've been working on becoming a teacher, or if you've been working on starting a business, expressing your skills, your hobbies, your interests differently, this could also be the time of big celebration where you're you start to feel sort of more grounded, more steady in your pursuits, and feel more recognized. Definitely let me know how has your life changed since 2022. Have you explored new pursuits? Have you connected with, maybe different interests? Have you sort of had an ideological shift where you realize that it's important to think more happy thoughts or something like that? Let me know. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you resonated with your horoscope. Always wishing for all of us to have a safe and joyful eclipse. Now I'm getting funny shadows on my face. This is always fun. But yeah, enjoy this time. Trust that the universe is guiding you, and even if things feel turbulent and unstable, this too shall pass. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.